I just want to begin this video with a recap and update of how my body of work has been progressing since we last touched base. Unfortunately, the sugar fabric stiffener was a complete disaster. Perhaps it's only more appropriate for materials such as lace or yarn, or more likely, I simply just messed up. With these swatches that I made, they took days to dry, and even then, it was not stiff, but rather very crunchy, and there were sticky droplets of syrup on it, which made an absolute mess. But that's okay. Knowing that this didn't work out for me, I'm happy to press on with the PVA water solution. Yes, there may be some inconveniences, but it's a faithful method, and one which even I can't fuck up. On the felting front, nothing has been proven too difficult. In fact, I'm finding it to be a relaxing outlet for my grief, as it's getting any pent-up emotions and feelings of restlessness out of my system, which is very healthy, and honestly the result has been quite fruitful. So I'm very, very happy with the work I'm producing now that I am pressing on, as time is of the essence. Okay, so I had my meeting and brought along the box, which I'll have to level with you guys. It just didn't work. I'm glad that I got the experiment out of the way. I could kind of gather during the making process that it probably wasn't going to work as well. It was not only just a struggle, and I didn't really want to make multiple boxes if I had to go through that very arduous and very precarious process. So even though the fabric itself was stiff by the PVA glue, it wasn't sturdy. It couldn't hold its own weight, let alone any candles that I would rest above it. So that's just a no-go. It's really back to the drawing board. My supervisor suggested that even though there's transformation taking place among the multiple objects, there needs to be like a body kind of unifying them together. I want that indexical relationship. I got down to really the nitty-gritty of what I'm trying to convey in this work, and that entailed looking at some hard truths in order to kind of really pinpoint that scope, like get to the heart of it, which I think I actually did, because it's such a very personal work. I really didn't want to, even though it was a point to confront these emotions in the work. But it's easy to say, oh yeah, I'm going to, confront this and expose that, but once you do it, it's like, it kind of scared me because I am talking about not just traumatic memories, but how they kind of also relate to suppressed emotions, and I think that's the take on my work. Like, even though I'm trying to build an effective connection with the audience who don't really need to know my backstory at all, it helps me ground the work. Yeah, I think I've pretty much resolved that now, and I really can't wait to pitch this to my supervisor in our next meeting. So my task today is to make another sketch of this new arrangement of work. I believe in our last meeting, my supervisor was actually telling me that it does need like a big body to tie it all together, and it was funny because like during the meeting, there was a phrase that she said which kind of just clicked with me. She was like you need, was it like a matriarch or just a body for this little family of the objects that I had already created, and that really clicked. what I am kind of envisioning the space now, and I think it reflects much more closely to this fear and suppressed emotions. Basically, I just need an element of danger. I kind of want like this very looming presence that is like, you know, kind of pouncing or being a watchful eye over this work. How I have it in my head is that these objects that I'm needle felting, they kind of like mark a time, like an ongoing process that isn't going quite right, but I'm like getting there. So they kind of embody my attempts at healing my own trauma from scratch, because I'm doing it all by myself. And this, you know, this very ghostly presence, I want that to be this like a looming fear that something is hovering from behind, and I'm like, oh shit, am I going to get caught with these with talking about these emotions? Yeah. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. Like, the reason that I do this is because kind of art is kind of my language. At least it's how I was able to bypass talking in an environment where I couldn't talk. So here's the first sketch that I made of my revisit for this installation work. As you can see here, I formed this looming entity as kind of like a wave or a spectral ghost or something. I really wanted to put down some movement which captures that action or that looming presence. And what I like about this image is that while it's hovering over these needle felted works, the audience, or at least from my perspective of trying to figure out the arrangement of this piece, it's not really certain whether it's like, say, pouncing for it, pursuing it, whether it's lunging towards it, or perhaps even like protecting it, like sheltering it, which is what I'm setting out for this entity to do. I don't want to strictly see it as a evil figure. I just want to show something that has a threatening presence just by being there. So the relationship between these two, let's call them components, the needle felted objects on this like invisible altar, they kind of capture the journey that I'm taking with healing. I'm actually presenting these as kind of votives or ritual offerings to this entity. Perhaps by tapping into this trauma to make these works, I'm almost even, I guess you could say I'm summoning it without really knowing what to expect. Excuse me if it feels like I'm going back and forth between using the box or not. Please understand that I've been filming these throughout the past month, but we have decided to bring back the box. I suppose in its first form as like very flimsy with objects on it as I had originally pictured. That didn't work out. However, we brought it back, we reconfigured it. Basically here we're taking off the objects and repurposing it as the entity. We're going to prop this box on its legs, make it animated, kind of tapping into animism and covering it with beeswax. And I think the natural unbleached beeswax really lends to the ritualistic aspects of this piece, as well as making it quite fleshy, like it's definitely different from the other components. Of course, I will be later on adding wool, just loosely to kind of give it almost like a fur onto this skin. Working with beeswax is actually really fun, aside from having my box topple over many times. But once I got over that obstacle just by taping it down with masking tape, it was so much fun to coat the box with this beeswax. I found it to be very therapeutic and calming to see the wax instantly dry and have these beautiful sculptural forms. Coating it with a paintbrush to just splattering it, dripping wax all over it, to have that lovely melted texture. And another idea that we have been playing around with, which I think will look really cool, we're going to try to have a big light inside, perhaps flickering. At least there'll be a glow emanating from within it, which will look really cool in this darkened gallery space. I do want it to be dimly lit and have the forms appear very otherworldly. There was, of course, one issue that I had to quickly resolve, and that was how the hell am I going to make this box stand up on its own and stay up for the entirety of my exhibition. At first we were mulling over the idea of using a wire armature, however that proved to be very frustrating to deal with. I had a lot of trouble finding the right kind of wire. It had to be white so it didn't show through the silk organza, especially the top part of the box where it was most translucent. Silver armature wire couldn't just do, it would stick out like a sore thumb. Plus wire is very, very expensive, even just for a little bit. So rather than use it, because I knew it was just going to be a nightmare to deal with it, I had to turn elsewhere. And just when I was at a loss on what to do, I thought about using plaster bandages, which actually, upon thinking about it, it kind of actually goes well with my reparation theme. So I did have an old roll lying around at home, and with a smaller box I made a quick prototype just to bring in to show my supervisor, and the idea really took off. Even just with one layer, the form was already sturdy enough, which meant that with 2 or 3 layers, perhaps even 5, just to make it really sturdy, it was easily going to hold the silk box, and I could tell that from the get-go. When I showed my supervisor, she really liked the idea, and she also suggested to take it even further. Going back to the idea of this box being a body and entity, something very fleshy which is conveyed through the beeswax, why not use this plaster gauze frame as a skeleton?